welcome everyone. We are so excited. We have today a special guest, one of my favorites, Dr. Bill Campbell, on to talk about all things fitness and nutrition. So, welcome, Bill.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. So, I actually got to meet, I just have to say this. I say this every time on my Instagram lives, but I got to meet Bill in person in October. And when I was telling Laura and kind of explaining, she knew who you were from watching my Instagram lives and everything. But I always say, Bill is the nicest person on planet Earth. I mean, your wife scored because you are the nicest human and you're just so sweet and smart. But I just love having you on. So it was such a pleasure to meet you in person last.
Yeah.
Now I'm excited to meet you in person because I have heard a lot about you. So
Wow. Well, this is going better than I thought so far.
We're like, we'll do this all the time. I'll sign up with these ladies. Well, we're going to get right to these questions because there is so much to cover. Today, I actually want to start by asking you about your research review that just came out. So, the two studies that were covered, I think will be perfect to talk about today. I finished it, well, the day you sent it out, so a few days ago, but it is so fascinating what the studies have shown. With just taking a little turn, let's first talk about the body weight versus the dumbbell free weight study. And if you can just explain it to us, and then we can kind of talk about, you can explain the results and we'll kind of take it from there.
Sure, yeah. So, and I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but if you have it in front of you, great. But the general study design was a university study, not in the United States. I forget which country it was, but what they did was over 2 years they took a weight training class, and these students in this university weight training class, the first year they said, "Hey, we're going to have the entire class do their resistance training with only their body weight and then some resistance bands for like 3 of the exercises." So literally no dumbbells, no barbells, no machines, just them, a chair, and an one of those elastic resistance bands. And I think they used that for shoulders for one of the leg exercises. And some of the exercises are like body weight squats, lunges, using the elastic band for an overhead shoulder press, dips against the chair. So just think of the most basic movements that you could do in your home with literally no equipment other than one band and a chair.
Yeah.
Not even a pull-up bar. So a lot of people,
Wow.
will use pull-up bars. So they used that as one group, and then the next year they had it all new students in the class, and they said, "Okay, we're going to have you do resistance training with a typical program." So leg press, curls, leg curls, shoulder press, rows. So what you would typically see in just a standard resistance training program.
Hmm.
And what they wanted to compare was amongst other things, but the main thing that I was focused on was muscle mass. Can you build muscle mass? And the answer to the study was, and this isn't surprising because we know this from other research, but all of the subjects were able to gain muscle mass.
Hmm.
And not surprisingly, the group that had actual dumbbells, resistance training machines, they gained considerably more muscle mass
Yeah.
than the group that didn't have any of that stuff. But what may be surprising, maybe not, the group that worked out in their homes, that did the home-based program, they did gain significant amounts of muscle mass.
Hmm.
So the notion, if we get stuck for some reason, like a pandemic would happen to come upon us, we don't have to just completely give up on all of our resistance training. There are things we can do in our home.
Hmm.
Now, to be fair, we have to appreciate these were in beginners, so these people didn't have resistance training experience.
Yeah.
And what I like about that is if you're dealing with somebody who's completely new to fitness, and let's just say they're shy or they're hesitant to go to a fitness gym, they can make progress at least early on,
Hmm.
just doing some of these basic body weight movements. Again, dips, body weight squats, lunges, things of that nature. Will you gain as much muscle as using weights? No. And the reason is at some point your body is not enough of a resistance
Mhm.
to impart the stimulus to continue to build muscle. Initially it is to build some muscle.
Yeah.
I would think that these people would probably plateau fairly quickly, but I would also suggest we can do a lot, in maintaining our muscles if we're in that situation. So that was the what I call the home-based resistance training program.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I actually just did an Instagram live 2 days ago with, Stacy Sims, and we brought this up, and we were talking about it because, the females and the age group that we're working with, there's still a lot of pushback for women to go to the gym. Either it might not be, sometimes it's location. It's not close by their house, they don't have the time to get there, or,
They're
they don't.
intimidated.
Yeah, they don't feel comfortable. I mean, that's probably the biggest one, or they just don't know what to do. So, all of my program, well, not all of them, but a lot of the programs that I have to just be at home because otherwise they can't participate. So there is a place for it 100%. But I tell them, I'm like, you do have a runway. If you're new to it, you will get a stimulus and you'll have a runway, but it will run out. And then, you have to add something like TRX can further that runway a little bit, with some other basic equipment, but eventually you're going to run out. The gym just has so much variety that you can use, especially again, since I only work with females, there's a lot of mobility issues as we age and, different injuries that a gym allows. There's such variety in equipment that they can still get a good stimulus. But I did love that it shows that you absolutely can build muscle more so if you're a newbie.
Yeah, so now we have evidence. So nobody, I mean, a lot of people I think would question that. Like, you can't even build muscle, can you? And like, well, actually you can. Here's the research that does this. And you make a good point with like TRX. And I don't know if you're known as a TRX person, but I always think of you as like, because I think that's where I first
Yeah.
saw you during the pandemic. You were the one like you were like way ahead of the curve here because you were already doing the home-based workouts. And I bought a TRX for I treated myself for Christmas. I haven't used it yet, but I bought it and hopefully we'll use it soon. But
Yeah.
that's you make the great point there. That would be a great transition once you start to plateau just with your body weight. Something like TRX now increases the resistance, and it's so, it's just so mobile.
Hmm.
Yeah, you
And
can take it anywhere.
yes, yeah, take it anywhere. Increasing some of your body weight with some of the movements you can do, depending where you put your feet or your arms, etc. So there's even a transition from just pure body weight to TRX to our traditional movements and external resistance.
Yeah. I mean, I think
It's
that's the.
such encouraging information
Yeah,
for
it's
people that haven't trained.
if
Yep.
you just have a little bit of equipment, you can do a lot. But, even without a TRX, how do people pull at their house? That's the hardest part, is if you don't have a
Yeah.
pull-up bar, you cannot vertically pull or horizontally pull with anything unless you're, like, under a table.
Yeah,
Exactly,
and I think that's what I would do, and
Yeah,
that's always like, is this table gonna fall over or
exactly.
yeah, that would not be good news. Let's move on to the second one. So the second one, the intermittent fasting plus time restricted eating, and then compared if that had more weight loss and was a better form of weight loss, or maybe a new weight loss strategy opposed to just a normal calorie deficit, a normal diet. Can you first explain the difference between time restricted eating and intermittent fasting, because they get lumped together and they get kind of confusing for people, but there's a very distinct difference.
Yeah, so let's look at intermittent fasting first. In its purest definition, intermittent fasting implies alternate day fasting. And when I say fasting, I mean literally fasting other than, water, so no calories. So, you eat typically people would eat normally Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. But Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 0 calories. So that would be the again the what I would call the foundational or the purest definition of intermittent fasting as described by alternate day fasting.
Mhm.
Now, when we talk about intermittent fasting, use that as our base definition. And then we start to have some, like, say, hybrid days where, well, I really don't want to go all day without eating anything. So what it's kind of morphed into is modified alternate day fasting, where people may have, let's say, 500 calories per day on these modified fasting days. Typically, they're not. There's more than one per week, and typically they're like not in consecutive days. So again, 2 to 3 days per week, maybe 500 calories per day, and the other days just eating what you would normally eat, or ideally at your maintenance calories if the goal is to lose body fat. So there's intermittent fasting. Think of it as some days where you eat normal and some days you eat nothing or very, very low amounts of calories. And
Okay.
that is between days. Now let's move to the concept of time restricted feeding. This is more of a focus of what happens within the day. So what do you do during the day on Monday, during the day on Tuesday? And all this is just is defining an eating window and a fasting window. Hence the term time restricted eating or time restricted feeding. The
Yeah.
most common application of time restricted feeding is people will have about an 8-hour window, most often 12 noon to 8 p.m. They're allowed to eat whatever they want, and then they don't eat anything before noon, and they don't eat anything after 8 p.m. And previous research reports that this is effective for weight loss.
Mhm.
Not because there's anything magical about this feeding window, but because people tend to eat less calories than what they're burning. So, without them really purposefully dieting, by just focusing on limiting the feeding window, they actually do end up dieting. So, that's what previous research suggested.
Mhm.
So, this study, I really liked it because it was the first study that I'm aware of that combined the paradigm of intermittent fasting. So, some days eating a lot more calories, some days eating less. And it added in this time restricted feeding component, which was within the day.
Mhm.
What would be the limits of the eating windows? So what they did in this study, they compared this intermittent fasting plus time restricted feeding. So that strategy, and I can give more details. They compared that to just a normal diet. And the normal diet was every day of the week for, all 7 days, reduce your calories by 30% per day. So that's very close to what we do in my lab when we do weight loss or fat loss studies.
Yep.
So it was an average of a 30% caloric deficit per day. The other group did a 70% caloric deficit. Or yes, so they were only eating 30% of their normal food intake 3 days out of the week. And when you do the average, it was the same thing. It was an average over 7 days as a 30% caloric deficit. The other thing that they did was on these days when they had these very, very low calories, they only were allowed to eat between 8 a.m. and 12 noon. So there's the time restricted feeding component. And the main research question was, at least for me, so the
Mhm.
researchers don't that are not always so hyper focused on body fat. But my main focus was, okay, what happened to body weight, really body fat? And
Mhm.
also the researchers looked at some metabolic health variables, which I also covered, because the research that I'm aware of up to this point, when there is a benefit with time restricted feeding and intermittent fasting, it tends to be metabolic health,
Mhm.
and does not offer any fat loss benefits. I mean, when calories are controlled. So
Yeah.
we'll start there. So should I get into the results?
Well, first, let me just say this. Have you ever done I'm sure you have because you've done every diet probably.
Yeah, I experiment a lot with a lot of different things.
Have you done, like, something like that? Well, at least the intermittent fasting, alternate day fasting?
No, I've not embraced, or embrace is probably the wrong word. I haven't experimented much. The thought of not eating anything, and I've done that I think twice in my life where I've gone 24 hours without eating any food. That was just more as a mental challenge more than anything. So I don't have experience doing that, and the reason is that the thought of that really scares me because I've
A foodie.
yeah, I'm a foodie, a large appetite. Um, it's funny, I'm hearing a lot about with the, with Ozempic and these anti-obesity drugs. This term I'm hearing a lot is food noise. Everybody's got food. Well, I have food noise because I think
Yeah.
about food all the time.
Is the best part. Anytime I go on, oh, I'm already planning out all of my I'm going to Australia next week and New Zealand, and I'm already planning out, like, all of my meals.
For sure.
The
Yes.
best part.
Hey, you gonna see the great Tony when you're there?
Yeah, so I'm gonna spend a few days in New Zealand and meet Stacy in person, and then head over to do a lot of filming with Tony for some upcoming projects. So,
Oh, awesome.
all
Well,
business.
tell Stacy I said hi and Tony if you would when you're traveling.
Yes. Oh, I will for sure. Okay. So, I mean, it's curious to me because for intermittent fasting, time restricted eating works really well for at least my population for females. But the intermittent fasting is just really hard for females, especially postmenopausal, to hang on to muscle. And I guess that's probably that's in your results of what happened. So, I'm curious because I read it and I have a little bit of notes, but I'll let you explain it about the results
Yeah.
of that.
And let me also say, I do almost daily follow a form of time restricted feeding.
Me too.
So I typically don't eat before 11, sometimes 12. And why do I do that? Well, I do that because I've learned I'm not that hungry in the mornings, and being having this food noise that everybody's talking about, I just know that I need to, and some people hate this term, but I like to bank my calories. So if I know I'm gonna be hungrier later in the day and I'm not hungry in the morning, it makes sense to me. Let's go ahead and feed my I'll eat when I'm hungry, and I
Mhm.
won't eat when I'm not hungry. So that's how that helps me control my body fat level. So there's my motivation.
Yeah.
Am I leaving a little, if I'm trying to get every gram of muscle mass possible, is that the ideal plan? And I don't think it is the ideal plan because we have other research that suggests if you don't evenly space out your protein, you don't optimize your muscle mass gains from resistance training. But again, I pick and choose. I'm not going to be on a bodybuilding stage anytime soon, but I also don't want to gain fat. So I'm making decisions to prevent additional fat gain, and I'm knowingly saying, okay, maybe I don't maximize my muscle mass with this decision. So in this study, the two main outcomes were, I'll just say fat loss, even though they focused on body weight,
Mhm.
fat loss, and the metabolic health outcome. And what they reported was similar to the previous research. There was no benefit to intermittent fasting and time restricted feeding for body fat loss. Both groups lost approximately the same amount of body fat. The benefits did show up with a few markers of glucose metabolism. So I think they looked at 5 different markers,
Mhm.
and 2 of the 5 were significantly improved with the time restricted feeding and intermittent fasting group. So, for people who, and again, I think you and me are both in this camp. I don't know what your reasons are for time restricted feeding, but this is there's a lot, and a lot of this research is also in rodent models, which I do not like to rely on, but we have also multiple studies in humans
Mhm.
saying that there are metabolic health benefits to this approach, whether it be time restricted feeding or intermittent fasting, both. This study just happened to combine them
Mhm.
and found the same thing. So, what do we do with this? If this diet works for you in terms of your body composition, then you go for it. There is no harm. There's no advantage and no harm with your body fat levels. Now, earlier I said for myself, it's possible that you are not maximizing your muscle mass. Now, that leads me to the latest, another study that I am reviewing for the February issue. And you probably heard of at least people talking about this large 100-gram protein
That
feeding.
was my next question.
Yes. So that data kind of influences my thinking on, were the prior harms with muscle mass, can they be alleviated with a large bolus feeding the night before, maybe early morning? So yeah, that is unknown, but I feel like things have changed. And I would also say, and when you read next month's issue, that study shouldn't have surprised a lot of people. It's just that everybody's been focused on incorrect interpretations of the data, and this study was the first one to really highlight it, in my opinion. But I go through, I'm telling you, if you want a well, actually, I'm doing that with my subscribers too. I'm gonna give a I go deep on protein metabolism. So I'm loving I liked what I did this month, but that study is really cool, and I'm excited about the protein metabolism research that
Oh,
just
I'm
came out.
signed up for the live.
All right.
Yes, on Thursday. It's on next Thursday, right?
I think that's right.
Yeah. Well, I'm signed up whenever it is. Well,
Awesome.
okay. So can we just scale back a little bit? So both groups lost the same, regardless of what they were doing. Same body fat. But
Yep,
that comes from just being in a calorie deficit. It does not
yep.
come from a specific eating, either intermittent fasting, time restricted eating, or a normal calorie deficit. I like the time restricted eating. Mine is a little bit different. So I eat early and then I stop eating at 6 p.m. when I have my dinner, which is hard for Americans because everyone eats so late.
Mhm.
A lot of people, and on weekends, you're the not fun one that's like, can we get at the Jerry Seinfeld hour at 5 p.m. reservation, 4:45? So you're not the most fun at a party, but um, it's a little bit easier to you're not digesting food to go to sleep, and then you can sleep better and all of that. So I like the time restricted eating when it's earlier and then cut off later. But again, it's nice to have options for clients because sometimes if someone has a lot of weight to lose, at least when I work with them, I'm just like, well, what can we do? You have a lot of body fat, but you also carry a lot of muscle mass when you're heavier. So it's interesting to, give them something without overwhelming them. And sometimes that's easier to just be like, this is your feeding window instead of being like, okay, well, here's your macros. Try to hit this for each meal. And, it can be very overwhelming for a lot of people.
And the thing I like about the time restricted feeding paradigm is people will follow, and you were just implying this. People will follow that, and they end up reducing their calories, but they don't really even appreciate or know that they're reducing their calories.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, myself included, as soon as I know I'm in a diet, well, now I'm hungry just even
Oh,
if
yes.
nothing's changed.
The cravings start
Yes.
just getting
Yeah,
intense.
nothing's changed except for I've been told myself I'm in a diet, and that's likely true for other people. I'm not an exercise psychologist, but I appreciate, yeah, just limit your feeding window, and you naturally decrease your calories and lose body fat. And that is a great feature of that type of dieting plan for some people.
Hmm.
I
Laura, you
think that's why so many people have success on it is because it's easy to follow and it doesn't feel like a diet and stressful.
Yep. So,
Yep.
do you do the same thing, or do
I
you
do
don't?
the same thing. I'm more like I'm in the middle of both of you. I like to eat early too, if I can, but I don't really get hungry until around 11 either. But I do drink coffee in the morning. Do you? Oh
No, I don't drink coffee.
my gosh, you're like my husband. There's
There's
only
2
you
of us
two
then.
in the world.
So you do
Yes.
drink Diet Dr. Pepper, yes?
Yes, I drink Diet Dr. Pepper, but I don't drink that until,
Later
yeah,
on.
11 or 12,
Yeah,
11 or 12. So, yeah, I don't need anything to wake me up, so to
yeah.
speak.
You're
Yeah.
just excited about life. I love this. Yeah, so I'm with you guys. That's where I feel like I thrive also.
Do you Laura, what question did you have? You had a good question about the something about people losing weight or not
Oh,
losing weight.
yeah. What would be your top reason or reasons for someone who says they're tracking calories but still not losing weight?
Uh, okay, so I would say there's 2 things that we would put on the table. So, one would be your body is adapting. So a lot of people will call that metabolic adaptation. So you're tracking everything. I trust you, and you're not losing weight. Your body has just adjusted to these lower calories, so that what used to be a caloric deficit is no longer a caloric deficit. That's one option. So, do we need to make changes based on your body adapting to your diet? And that's much more likely to happen if they've been dieting a long time and if they've been dieting aggressively for a long period of time.
Mhm.
The other consideration is, well, you say you're tracking, but you're not tracking everything, or your tracking is severely flawed. The existing research would suggest that one of those is almost always the culprit, and it's the one that nobody wants to admit, and that is you're just not tracking or adhering.
Mhm.
And here's something too. Some people track during the week, but maybe not the weekend.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so I came up with what I called an energy balance audit, where we take that first thing off the table. So we actually we look that in the eye and we say, "Hey, before I ask you to go spend a ton of money and time testing your metabolism, getting blood work, seeing your physician, before we do that, let's make sure that what you're saying you're eating is actually what you're eating."
Yeah.
And what that can look like is, on a most basic level, you're going to send me a picture of everything that goes into your body, everything except for water,
Oh, I like
and the number of calories that you are attaching to that. And then I can say, as an example that I always use, somebody would send me a piece of lasagna that they had for dinner, and yep, it was 240 calories, and you yeah, you do the you do the math, and it's like, "That was 840 calories,
Yes.
not 240." So, there's that, or another level is, for 1 month, we're gonna do a meal prep service, so that everything that goes into your mouth is we're gonna order it in, and you just scan that,
Oh.
and yeah, and again, that can be more expensive for some people, but a lot of people spend a lot of money going out to eat,
Mhm.
and what you do is you make sure that when you're ordering this, you make sure that they're in a true caloric deficit, so that they would likely lose weight, and of course, they almost always would, when if this is the only thing they're eating. Um, and then the last thing would probably is, a lot of people just they drink a lot more, and I don't drink, so this isn't obvious to me, but a lot of coaches that I talk to, and it seems like, I don't wanna be, trashing on the women, but it seems like a lot of women drink a little wine at night,
Yeah.
and they're just not fully appreciating all of those calories. So, the research would say you're not tracking right, or you're not tracking everything that's going into your body. If we've done our tests and we know that's the case, then we would say, okay, your body has adjusted. Let's adjust your calories or increase exercise if you still want to lose body weight, as one option. Or there's a medical problem. Let's get your thyroid tested. Are you do you have hyperthyroid? Whatever. So we
Mhm.
could also have a medical investigation into, is everything seemingly fine here? And lastly, if a female is going through menopause, um, that, as I'm learning, and I am trying to learn as much as I can, there are things that don't make sense that make sense for every other human in any other age
Mm.
range, that aren't making sense during that time.
Yeah, it's the really hard conversation to have, Bill, and I have to do at every fat loss group that Tony and I run. Is
Yeah. So what do you say or do?
I have to just be like, very kindly and gently be like, well, tracking is a skill, and most people, including myself, do not nail it. I always tell my groups at the very end, I'm like, I give myself probably a C anytime I do a fat loss phase, because it is freaking hard to be in a deficit all the time. And Tony explained something, there's like a hand mouth gap, where people like don't even realize that they're like, feeding their kids and grab a few crackers, and it's like they don't even remember that they had that. They remember the big food, but that's why I like the picture, taking a picture of everything
I know, that's brilliant.
so that you can like track it that way. It's usually, I would say 8 out of 10 times, it's people aren't tracking well because it's hard. Or you get like a food that has 19 different things in it, and then they're like, I don't even know, this is so overwhelming, I don't even know what to put in my fitness pal for this. And you know to
Yep.
plug for the meal prep, I mean, I make all of my clients have to learn to track for at least a few weeks, because once they track, I mean, they're like, Haley, I was eating 1,000 calories more than I should have. And I'm like, mm-hmm. They're like, I
It
had
Yep.
helps them
no
be aware.
idea. I had
It's
pizza last night, but it was homemade. I'm like, did you drizzle some olive oil on the crust? Well, yeah. I'm like, did you count for that? No.
there's
It's
no
still
calories in
there,
olive
whether it's
oil, is
cooked or
there?
not.
Yeah, and the
So,
nice thing about having people track, it's an education that kind of lasts for a lifetime. Once you do it for a few months,
you
you remember things for the rest of your life.
I
yeah.
agree.
And I love that you, when you're not dieting, that you say, don't you love cold cereal? Like, are you a cereal eater, or what did you say that was like, I don't know, there was some kind of junk food that I was like, "Oh, I love that too."
Oh, cinnamon toast crunch. Is
Yes.
that
Isn't that amazing?
well,
I'm
let me say, I can't that is evil to me because I eat 3 or 4 bowls and it's like I had nothing. Now, I ate a
Yep.
lot of that. I don't know if I told you, and I haven't really discussed it yet, but I went on a very high carbohydrate diet for almost all of last year, like 8 or
yeah,
9 months, to essentially prove that you can lose weight eating very highly processed carbs. So, yeah, I ate a lot of Cinnamon Toast Crunch
were you
cereal.
hungry? I
Yeah.
mean, were you hungry because your calories were taken up by processed foods that aren't gonna fill you up?
Yeah, so it's the worst way to diet, and it's I would never instruct anybody to diet like this. But for some reason, when I'm dieting, I'm I'm kind of robotic, and again, I'm not saying I struggle when I'm not dieting to me is easy. I don't know if it's a skill. I'm your typical. I have a hard time maintaining my weight once I lose body fat. Um, so yeah, I didn't struggle with hunger more than any other time, which again, most people would, I think.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, the worst kinds of, I mean, I would have chocolate chip cookies. I mean, I have, and I'm going to publish this, or I hope to publish this as a case study, and we're going to publish everything I ate for like the 8 months, so it will be obvious. And it was a really high, wasn't just high carbs, it was the kind of carbs that people say you cannot lose weight eating these types of foods, and clearly that's if that's true, then I just disproved it with one case study because I
I
did. I
can't
watched.
wait for this.
I should have sent you the batch and box cookies then.
Yeah.
Well,
We
when was that after October?
I can't remember, but man, I would have been sending you something every month to fuel your carbohydrate. The fact that you could eat all the carbs. I mean, that's the best
Yep.
part.
Was it hard when you stopped doing it and going back to normal? Did you get headaches from all of a sudden cutting out sugar and carbs, or did you just feel back to normal, or
No, I remember, like, just I hadn't had much. I mean, we also have to appreciate that's a very low protein diet, which I
yeah,
have never
exactly.
done in my adult life. I've always eaten pretty high protein. So that was the biggest adjustment. I
Mhm.
was like, I was craving protein bars. Like I haven't had a protein bar in months.
Yeah.
Um, So that was one thing. Started grilling chicken again. I don't remember, and I don't want to give people the impression that I'm all vegetables and all lean meats all the time. I will typically like I'll have pizza pretty much every Sunday. I go out to eat with my family Saturday night, and I don't
Yeah.
care what chicken
Yeah,
tenders, whatever.
yeah,
So that I ever eat like that? No, and I was getting I mean, I've started to, and again, I'm doing this for science, but I'm like, "Man, this isn't good for me."
yeah,
So I had those thoughts. There was nobody happier when it was over, but I can't say that it was less, it was more just, I'm glad that it's over.
Yeah.
My wife was really glad it was over because I didn't eat the same foods as what she would make for our family,
Right.
I would she's
yeah,
making whatever she makes, and I'm I'm eating Cinnamon Toast Crunch for
yeah.
dinner.
So,
That's
did you
fascinating.
I don't know if you can say this because you haven't published the study on yourself, but I'm curious if you lost muscle mass given the low protein over that period of time.
Yeah, so I don't know because, what we did was a 9-site B mode ultrasound. So I had my colleague who has you know, other than MRI, the best equipment to test that. I
Mhm.
actually didn't get that data back, yet. So that's the best test we did on my muscle mass. I also did DEXA, BOD-POD, in-body BIA, so ultrasound. So I did a bunch of body composition tests.
Yeah.
In general, um, no, I don't think so. Officially, I don't know because I haven't gotten back the best data. But from the body composition data, like the 2 compartment models, DEXA, BOD-POD, etcetera, I don't think I did. And my protein was, a little less than 100 grams per day when typically I would be eating, 160 to 220 grams per day, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Now, there is a theory on why I maintain muscle mass, and I will write this in the discussion. Actually, we already wrote the introduction before I started the study. But insulin is pretty anti-catabolic. So if you have high insulin levels, that protects muscle that lowers rates of muscle protein breakdown. So if I didn't lose muscle mass, well, why didn't I? Well, 2 reasons. One, I didn't change my resistance training at all. So that
Mhm.
stayed the same throughout. And I actually set myself up for this case study 6 months prior to starting it. So my exercise was the same 6 months before I started this diet all the way through. So were my calories. So was my protein low because I didn't want to just start the diet with high protein and then all of a sudden low protein. No, the only thing that changed was the calories. I was eating high carbs to maintain, and my weight was 231 was my highest weight, and that's by far the heaviest I've ever been. In fact, when I saw you in October, I wasn't too far removed. Oh no, that was at my low point. Yeah, so that was
I was gonna say, "What are you talking about?"
yeah, so yeah, I was like 205 there because that was at the end of this dieting, but I was up to 231, um, and I'll say this too, which was crazy. I also did blood work, and at baseline, so like the day before, the week before I started this, my total testosterone levels were low, almost like schoolgirl level low. And I was like, "Wow." Like that I've my testosterone's always, high normal.
Yeah,
In the middle, but the high end of the middle. And, like, the clinical threshold for being low was 264, mine was 267. And I was like, "Ooh, this
yeah,
isn't good."
Yeah.
At the end of my diet, it went back to normal. So there's more evidence. We have a very, very some people would call it a health crisis with males and low testosterone. The research on it's scary. But in my case, and a lot of other research suggests it's because we have excess fat or excess adiposity that's causing this. And in my case, it was true. It's the only change I made.
yeah.
Wow.
Men have it so much easier. Just gonna say that. The
Oh,
female research, I mean, especially in the menopause category, which there isn't a lot of, but hopefully that is oh, I know
Yeah.
that's changing. But man, it's a different game for us older ladies.
Oh, I know. And again, I'm starting to go into that universe, and what I'm learning, it's and a large part of my interest was my wife's experience. She's now postmenopausal, but it's men would never get treated by healthcare professionals like women do. Like it's and I'm starting to hear these stories. It's and I guess I'm glad I'm a man, so I guess I get better care, but it's like, "Oh, yeah, you're just an aging woman, that's how it is." I don't think men would ever get that answer.
Yeah.
No,
Um,
I don't
so,
either.
yeah, it's, yeah, it's and I have so much to learn, and you're right. Um, I've always said the fitness profession, they just ignore that, like, it's just ignored. I don't know why, and there is research, it's just that nobody cares, nobody talks about it. I mean, Stacy's one of the few.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I'm loving it. I've got a grad student that's been speaking to Stacy. So we're actually we're doing a few studies on women. Like one of them is what I want to do is have just a case series study. Get case series means like 6, 8, 10 women.
Mhm.
2 women do a rapid fat loss study, like very severe pre-menopause, so early 40s, mid 40s, no signs of menopause.
Yeah.
2 women do the same thing that are in menopause, currently going through it, and then 2 to 4 women that are clearly post-menopause, half that are on HRT and half that aren't, and just look at, is the body able to lose fat with this aggressive fat loss approach? And what effects does HRT have? What effect does not being, that being premenopausal? So that's going to be that's a study we're hoping to do this year, and
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
very
so glad.
I'm so
yeah,
excited. I have plenty of women that will sign right up in all of those different
categories.
categories.
Yeah, it's yeah, because that again, that's we're going to learn quickly with a study that's that aggressive. Now, granted, it's only going to be a handful of women, but we'll do blood work, we'll do hydration testing, all of it, and it may be virtual. So if it's virtual, I just have to confirm that they have X, Y, or Z
Yeah.
tests that everybody has access to, where they don't have to come to my lab to do the assessments.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I mean, it's such it's a billion-dollar market for everyone that focuses on, women in this age group. And so there's so much misinformation and women are desperate. So they're just like, what do I do? What do I buy? I'm tired of not getting any results. So more research will be so great. I have a question for you about what do you think as far as in-body, body pod, we know the DEXA is like the gold standard, hydrostatic underwater weighing. Where would you rank, like next to a DEXA, what's best and then what is the least accurate, would you say?
So let's assume that Dex is the most accurate. Although I will say, in my case study, it was not it was it
Oh,
was one of the worst, which is surprising.
Wow.
Um, But typically, yeah, DEXA is probably the gold standard. Now, I also want to say this because most people don't know this. If you get a DEXA and you get any other test, bod pod, ultrasound, in body, the DEXA will put you 4, 5, 6% higher than any other device.
yes. I hated it.
Yeah. Um, all yeah, true almost across the board.
Mhm.
Um, so DEXA, I really like the in-body 'cause, it's for myself, and when we've used it in my research and compared it to DEXA, it tracks very closely. Same thing with bod pod, so all of them, and even skin folds or ultrasound, as long as the technician is trained,
Mhm.
that that can be, and it's even, I would say it's the best if you have a trained person because 'cause you're getting regional changes in body fat.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say about in bodies or BIA, bioelectrical impedance technology in general, if you're very obese or if you're really lean, the error starts to get. Uh, uh,
Mm.
they become more and more inaccurate the leaner and the fatter one gets.
Yeah.
So just something to appreciate with them. And let me say this, also in my case study, I tested 4 home scales. And I said, okay, which one of these is better? And I found one that I think I can recommend. I got to run some more analyses on it. But the thing that you want when you're choosing a body composition thing is make sure you use the same device the same device
Mm,
all the time. So if you're going out and getting a DEXA, use that same DEXA and ideally the same technician that's analyzing it for you. Don't get a DEXA one time and a bod pod the next and the skin folds the next time. You'll the data will be all over the place. So use the same thing. And ultimately, what you really care about, whatever device you're using, is it able to detect changes in fat losses over time if you're dieting? A lot of these home scales that use BIA technology cannot do that.
mhm.
They're great at body weight, but I had very little confidence in many of them where I would never even, that's why I don't use it in research.
Yeah.
But again, I've tested 4 of them, compared it to the highest threshold, other than killing the person and literally dissecting their fat and weighing it. Nobody wants to sign up for that
No,
study.
nobody's signing up for that one.
No.
Yeah. So I do again. Some of these home-based scales, some of the ones I tested, I think at least the ones that I had are better than anything I've seen before.
Mhm. Do you think though that with the InBody, you have to have like the same hydration levels kind of going in because there's so much variable with the water content?
Yeah, so the way that works, and you're exactly right, it's that machine is designed to measure your body water. That is what it's doing. In fact, it's putting an electrical current through your body that you don't feel, and how fast or how slow that current goes through your body is dependent on how much fat tissue you have. Fat doesn't have much water, so it slows that current down. Muscle has a lot of water, 70% by volume, so it goes through faster. So
Mhm.
that machine is the most sensitive to water.
Yeah.
But because it also measures your body water, even if you are dehydrated or hydrated, you are able to make adjustments on your body composition. So it is the most sensitive, yes, but in my opinion, you'd have to be pretty dehydrated or overly hydrated for it to make a large impact. Which again, let me say, whenever you get body fat testing, always do it in the same condition. Like
Yeah.
get up, go to the bathroom, and then go do your test and wear minimal clothes. Don't eat anything, don't drink anything. In our research studies, we don't allow people to work out the day prior just in case there's water retention from that.
Mhm. Well, I do the, hydrostatic underwater weighing,
Mhm.
because that's what's close by me other than an InBody. Uh, DEXAs are hard to find in the US where I feel like I did one in like a I don't know, like a trailer home, like and the girl was like 17, and I walked out and I was like, "Okay, I kind of hover around 16% body fat, give or take." And it was like she came back, she's like, "Okay, so your body fat's 26%." And I was like, How did it go up? How did it go up 10?"
Yeah.
I was like, "I'm ripping this one up. I'm not keeping that."
Yeah, let's keep finding one that gives
Local
us
is
the
a
lowest.
wash.
Yeah, I'm like, "I'm going with the other one." But the underwater weighing, to your point, I went in because I was doing this I always do like a science experiment with my fat loss course too. And so this time I was like, all right, I did a bike ride that morning that was like 2 hours, climb up the mountain. And then I didn't have time to really eat. So I went in and it said that over 6 weeks I had lost like 3 pounds of muscle and like I don't know, 5 total pounds. I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah, not valid.
Yeah, and so she's like, "Haley," I was like, "Well, I can't put this in my group." She's like, "Well, are you dehydrated?" I'm like, "Well, yes, I've never weighed this on the scale ever." She's like, "Go to Noodles and Company." And I went and had a mass you know how they have those big Rice Krispies if you've ever eaten there? They have the big Rice Krispies and a big bowl of pasta, and then I went back and all my muscle had come back up. I was like, Phew. I mean, so things like that, yeah, it's good to go in with the exact same situation,
Yep.
especially when you're doing a short period of time because, you know,
Yeah.
you don't have that much that you're gonna be losing, hopefully.
No, and even if you did lose a little, the machines aren't sensitive enough. So it's I explain it like this, like, would you use a calendar to time somebody running 100 meters? You can't. Like, the calendar just gives you days. Like, I don't know how long it, you know? And some of these body composition devices, if you're trying to get tested every week, they're not sensitive enough, just like a calendar's not sensitive enough. You need a stopwatch
Yeah.
to measure somebody running 100 meters. Body composition devices, any of them, they're not sensitive. They'll give you a number, which is what confuses people.
Mhm.
But I'm telling you, that number is an estimate and it's not you if you lost a little bit or you gained a little bit, it's not sensitive enough to detect that change.
Yeah.
So I would say never get a body composition test before 4 weeks of an intervention.
Mhm.
Now, if you're really aggressive, you're really doing low calories. Yeah, 2 weeks. That's probably enough if you've gotten changes. But a lot of people just they don't appreciate. They think that the number on the machine is its truth because it's a technology and you plug it in and
Yeah.
it's got fancy buttons. And it's unfortunately it doesn't work like that. It does give you a number, and I use this example. If I had you test your heart rate right now, what would it be? Let's just say it would be 58 beats per minute. And then a minute later, you test it again and it's what, 64 or 54. Well, did you go out running or did you rest? No. So why is there variability in your heart rate of all things? Well, there is. Just like there's variability when you step on a body composition machine, there's variability in the exact foot placement or where are you at on that DEXA table both times. The machines had variability in and of itself. So there's variability in everything.
Yeah.
I did the in-body in California and here, and I did it in the morning around the same time, exactly what you said, didn't have anything before, and I felt like it tracked really, really well for me. And
Yeah.
I never did it sooner than 30 days. I think that's the soonest I ever did it
Mhm.
apart from each other, but I had a lot of success with that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of I actually bought a second one for my research lab. And why do I like it? Well, because I know that it tracks well with all of our other measures, whether it be ultrasound, um, bod pod. We have a bod pod now as well. DEXA. So to me, because it tracks so well with other machines,
Mhm.
that's good. And the main thing is it's so non-invasive. I don't, you know, you don't have to dunk yourself underwater a couple times or be in a bathing suit.
Yeah.
Just get in a sports bra in shorts and jump on the thing, and in 90 seconds, you're done. So it's so convenient.
It feels so good though, you get in this hot tub, it's like a warm bath.
Just is a lot of
Like,
work
"Do I
though.
have to get out yet? Let's do one more dunk." I'm not ready to get out yet.
Well, typically, I used to do them in grad school. We would have them go under like 6 or 8 times. Like, how many times would
Oh,
you
I
go
would
under?
do at least 4 or 5 because I try to squeak out any I'm like, "Okay, let's see if I can get any more," so it becomes but then by, like, the 5th time, I'm like, "I feel like I'm gonna pass out." It's being
Yeah,
up there.
it's such an uncomfortable feeling with no air in your lungs. Like, it's
Yeah.
not enjoyable.
No, it's not. So, Bill, I kind of did, I didn't do a great introduction to you to all of the podcast listeners that I feel like everyone just knows you, but assuming they don't, and this is their first intro to you, can you wrap up, kind of just say, like, what do you do? You talked about your lab, but exactly what that is, and then, the research review that kind of we reviewed and what that looks like.
Sure. So I'm a professor of exercise science at the University of South Florida. I direct a research lab called the Performance and Physique Enhancement Laboratory, where we focus on fat loss, and I like to also have an emphasis on muscle, so maintaining muscle when dieting. And the type of people that I help the most are the people they're serious about their nutrition and fitness, but they're not elite athletes. They're not bodybuilders stepping on stage. So I like to say that my research helps people optimize their physiques within a maintainable lifestyle. So that's what my research focuses. And separate from that, I created a research review. It's called Body by Science. And essentially, for a lot of fitness professionals, they don't have the time to read research to share it with all of their clients. So I do the hard work of reading the research, and then I summarize it pretty efficiently. Every article is solely focused on fat loss or muscle gain. And then the most valuable aspect of what I do is I bring in fitness professionals. So Haley, you were one of the few people I've actually had twice. So I summarize the research, I interpret the research, and then I bring in expert coaches and I say, how would you apply this research to your clients? Because the fitness professionals are the one that are dealing with this with all of their clientele. I don't have clients, but I can help with the research analysis. So the research plus the application is what I think provides the service, the best service to the subscribers of that.
Yes. And anyone can get it. I know I have a lot of clients that are not trainers, that have subscribed, and it's what, $7.99? What's the price of
Yeah.
it right now?
$7.99 on a monthly subscription. If you pay for the year, you get like a month free. And what I've been doing is having live sessions every month. That's
Love
also part of that $7.99, where we talk about the anti-obesity medications, Ozempic, Wegovy. This month I'm going to talk about muscle protein synthesis and protein metabolism. So that gives me an opportunity to actually talk to the people that attend the live sessions as well.
Oh, yes. It's
Amazing.
fire. We're going to call it fire. So I'm so glad that there are people like you, because this is why I partnered with Tony. I'm so glad he's like nerd of all nerds. You read the research at 4 a.m. and then bring it to our group and just give me a Cliff Notes version of what it is, because I don't have time.
No, and if you did have time, some of the research, it's hard to read, like
Ah,
that protein study that we were talking about. Good luck trying to understand. I've read that thing 4 or 5 times. It is a dense research study. My dissertation was in protein.
yeah. Oh,
Well,
I'm so glad you do it.
I know.
Bless you. Well, Bill, we hope to have you on again. I know that your time is super valuable. So, as always, I'm so, so grateful that you agreed to do this. My audience loves you. And I know all of the Body Pod listeners will love you as well. So, thank you so much for joining. And
Yeah,
hopefully,
thank you.
we get to see you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me on again.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for listening, everyone.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and sharing the Body Pod with your friends.
Until next time.